Welcome back, guys. So, moving on in the build, we get to the point that I think flummoxes most people who build this kit, and it's probably one of the most involved parts of the kit. So, once we complete step 9, then we're moving on to step 10, which is beginning the wheel stations for the kit. And everything you do here, you have to do 10 times, because there's 10 of them. Apart from when you make the wheels up, you have to do 40 times because there's 4 wheels on each wheel station. So what I have done off camera, purely to get an idea of how things go together and how easy it is to put this together, I have completed the rear, what will be the rear right, it looks like rear left but it's rear right because we're upside down, wheel station. And hopefully you can see there we've got all the hydraulic pneumatic lines in. The wheel station is designed to move, which is really good. Doesn't move much when you get the lines in, fair enough, but it's good that it's got that articulation, which basically means that we'll be able to make sure that all the wheels are level and we don't have an axle floating in midair, which is really good. And with care you can actually make it movable, which is really, really important and will dictate how you carry on with your build. Purely because when you look at the wheels, they're in doubles. If you cannot articulate your, or don't intend to want to articulate your axle around, you cannot get the inner set of road wheels when the axle is orientated straight up and down like this. So if you're not worried about articulation and movement and you're just intending to glue this all together, bang bang bang, you're going to need to assemble the whole axle. You're going to need to paint it all up and then glue it in, and then you've got to work with all these lines, and that's entirely up to the builder. Now me, I want to get it to the point where I can actually get all the wheel stations in, maintain the articulation on them. Don't intend to move it very many times, right enough, but maintain the articulation so I can paint the whole model like it complete. And then once it's been painted and weathered, then we can articulate it and put the wheels on the inside, locate it, and then if we want we can glue it into place, and then we can focus on getting the exterior doubles on the axle to the point of completing it. But to do that, obviously I need to get all the wheel stations in, I need to get all the pneumatic hydraulic lines in, and then I'll need to turn it back over and get all the ramps constructed and everything, and join the trailer deck to the swan neck. So there is quite a lot of work to do, hence why I completed this wheel station off camera, because I just needed to see how I was going to put it together. Now I just wonder with my kit, I think the vinyl tubing supplied for these lines was missing because I've never found it. And I would need to look at my other kit I've got in the stash to see just what it is. But looking at the instructions, there's something like 4.8 meters of vinyl tubing required, which is an awful lot. So what I've done is I ditched it. Even if I found it, I mean, I would have ditched it, and I've gone for 0.7 millimeter lead wire. So in these packets, so this is ASK distribution, it's each length is 250 mil long and there's 16 pieces. So you need 2 pieces per wheel station, so you need 20 pieces of wire, so you need 2 packets basically. Now I got these from Scale Model Shop. I'll put a photo up with their details. Online model shop, absolutely fantastic service. I've used them. Anything really I buy offline, it's my first go-to model shop. Used them for years, and the service you get is exemplary. So there's a little plug for Scale Model Shop. I don't have an affiliate link to them. I'm not sponsored by them, although I'd be quite happily to be sponsored, but I don't mind giving them a plug, because Their service is great, and it is just what you'd expect from a local model shop. So that's where I got that from, and it's really quite reasonable priced as well. I think they're only about like £4 or £5 a pack, which is really not too bad at all. And they have loads of different sizes. They've got flat, they've got half round, and they've got round wire. So they've got anything you really need to do scratch construction. But for this kit, the lead wire is an absolute must. It's far, far easier to work than the vinyl tubing ever would have been. So quite happy with that. Anyway, moving on. So what you see here is all the parts taken off the sprues and given a rough cleanup. So what we'll do is we'll just start here with part P3. This will be the I'm assuming it's the, well, I would call it a shock absorber, but it's got hydraulic lines to it, so it's obviously like a pneumatic suspension strut. So you put P36 into P3, and then you've got a spring that goes in. Oh, trust me, I would throw it across the floor. Excuse me a minute. Right, found it. I knew I was going to do that. So, spring goes in. And then you have the strut top that goes on now. There is a bit of tension on the spring, not a lot, but there is enough to disrupt the bonding surface of the glue, because obviously extra thin will only set as quick as extra thin sets. So what I did on the other part is I just touched in a couple areas of super glue, purely to give us the ability to set the part in place on the top of the strut and then hold it down just until the glue sets off. And then once it's cured off and we know we can let go, then we can just paint on a bit of extra thin, and that will give the more solid joint. So there we go, that's it there. Good and solid. Super glue's done its job, and this is a really good technique for many different applications when you're modeling, where you need to get that quick bond in place, quick secure bond. You don't need to do the whole jointing surface, just a couple of spots, and then you come back in with the extra thin to firm up and really cure up the bond. So there's the extra thin on. We can give it a little nudge now just to help that adhesion, and there you can see the strut is working perfectly. And it's very important to try and keep this working. Try and avoid getting any glue on the sliding surface, so you can then have that full articulation, and then that way we can set the height of the trailer when we get the load on it and make sure we don't have any rogue axles. Now the next thing to go on is the hydraulic junction box. I don't know what the proper name is, but it's where the hydraulic lines meet the piston and the unions are. Now if you can see that on my dry hands, there's a couple of little jointing nipples on the end of those unions. Now that is for the vinyl tubing to glue onto. We don't need that. What we do need is a flat surface, and if you don't take them off here, you have to try and fight, and it's a pain in the arse to get them off. Excuse my language, it's a pain in the rear to get them off when this is built up. So ask me how I know. Yeah, because I didn't do it last time. So this is me learning from my first build, and hopefully giving you guys handy tips to avoid the stress and the hassle of having to do it once it's made up. So that just goes on the side, and the back of it's got a locating pin, and it's actually curved to the shape of the cylinder. So it's actually a really nice little fit. So just make sure it's aligned in parallel with the cylinder. If you need to, you can always come back in and just wick in a little bit extra glue there just to help it bond. Right, so there's our cylinder constructed. Happy with that. The next thing to do is to put the cylinder in the arm. Now, this is a problem with these instructions because, well, it's not really a problem, but the lines they want you to put on, they actually expect you, if you put the, let's see which one's which. So this is this side here. So the piston goes in like this, and they expect you to lay in the lines in here, 2 lines in here, and then join this arm together. Now you can do that if you want. However, I found an easier way of doing it, and you'll never know that the lines have been cut and glued back together. So, anyway, let's get these arms together. Now I call this a trailing arm. I don't know what the proper terminology is. But it's really fiddly. That's one thing this tank trailer recovery transporter vehicle is. This very, very fiddly parts. Lots of small parts. So you've got to try and figure out how to get this together without throwing it across the room. So again, check the articulation. Now we need to make sure we keep the glue well away from that joint. So when you glue in, make sure you knock off the excess from the glue brush. So you're not actually applying loads and loads of glue in the first instance. You're just applying enough glue to bond the surface. And it doesn't take an awful lot of glue to have that chemical reaction with the plastic. All it needs to do is soften it, and then pressure from your hands will cause that plastic weld to happen, and then as the glue evaporates and dries, you then have that permanent joint. So a good squeeze. Could always put a peg in there if you want. Always checking that we've maintained the articulation, and then we'll just put a little run of glue here around this main boss area, or the pivot arm, and a good squeeze to get that bond in place. Right, there are a little bit of should I say that this part is a little bit flashy. Whether the molds are a bit worn or not, I don't know, but you can just come in with a scalpel or a craft knife and just trim it away. It's nothing deadly at all. And when you think how many frames are getting molded through these master molds, it's no wonder that they get a bit worn. Right, so next part to make is the brake chamber. So the thing to remember here is this part obviously goes in towards the axle pivot when we put it together, and on this brake chamber it is handed, so it has to go a particular way. Again, I'll try and show you without throwing it across the room. If we look at the brake chamber, on one side you have 2 little nipples. Again, that was for the vinyl tubing, and then on the other side there's just a bit of detail. So we need to make sure, oh god, I've just broken the mirror off, clumsy tonight. Need to make sure that those 2 nipples point in the way, but what we do need to do is we need to cut them off. Again, it's just so we've got a flat gluing surface for the lead wire. They cut off very easy with a sharp scalpel. So that's perfect. And then the next thing to do is obviously affix them to their mounting bracket. Again, it is very small stuff, and they don't fit very well either. I think the spacing on the holes is a bit off, and they're a bit flashy. So take time on the clean up to get rid of the flash. Bit of glue, let it do its thing, and the glue will actually melt away any flash that's in the way, and then you've got a bond. And then what we have here is the brake activation lever from the brake chamber. So the brakes are a pneumatic system, and I would imagine the suspension strut is a hydraulic system. Hence why I say pneumatic hydraulic. I could be wrong, I don't know, but I'm just making some wild assumptions here. Right, so now we move on to the actual wheel station arm itself. And that just, we'll do a dry fit on that. There we go. The thing to remember here in the top is this is obviously where the station pivots, and will be in close contact with the floor of the trailer, or the underside of the trailer. So the thing we need to do is make sure we've got it well cleaned up and we don't have any protrusions that could put it out of a line. So with a flat file, make sure both sides are evenly lined up. We just want to come in and file away any of the sprue attachment points and any burring or flash or anything like that. So we've got that flat surface. The rest of it we can do once it's glued together, but we've obviously got to put the swivel in here to blow away the dust. So the swivel is part P13, and with a swivel in there we would not be able to make sure that surface is true and even. So swivel just fits in. Get my pointy tweezers. Fits in nicely, and then we can just join those two parts. There we go. So there's the swivel. Now it's very, very important that we're very, very careful with the glue. We really do not want to get any glue near here, because we don't want to cause this to seize up, purely because even if, well, if you knew you were gonna just glue it all up, then you need to make sure you align the swivel point with its keyway pointing to the rear, in line with the seam, and that way you'll get it in the straight fore and aft position on the vehicle. But if, like me, you want to have that ability to alter the angle, then you need to make sure you don't get it glued. So just give me a minute, my phone is ringing, I'll be back in a minute. Back. So, where were we? Joining this arm together. So yeah, we need to maintain the function of the pivot, and we need to maintain the function of all the pivot points. So obviously now we're putting, I'll tell you what I will do before I put the arm in any further. We're putting the arm in that's got articulation for the hydraulic cylinder. And then obviously we've got the main trailing arm pivot point. And this is another good reason for using a flat file. So it leaves the surface really, really nice. Not that you're going to see any of this when you build it up, but it's always good practice. So let's get the arm in orientation. So there's one side. Oh, I'm missing a part. I did wonder about that. P10, which is this part here. And it says P10. This is the bit that this is the actual axle. That's the bit the brake chamber attaches to. Again, a little bit flashy. The file makes very short work of it. Right, so this piece goes on here. And we need to make sure we get it the right way. So the axle goes uppermost, like so, and then with a cutout for the brake chamber on the top. So when we're happy with its position, we go in with the glue. Again, don't go overly, just put a reasonable amount in. Just give it a moment to do its thing, start that chemical reaction, and then you want to just push it and make sure you can use your Mark 1 eyeball that it's a good square fit in all ways. It's squared and lined up to the trailing arm. Right, now we've got that, then what we can do is whilst the trailing arm is laid down, we can locate the top of the strut and hold it with one finger, and then come in and maneuver the trailing arm onto its pivot point. It will go there eventually. There. So that's your half construction there. And the next thing is just to simply drop the other half of the assembly. You can locate it on the bottom. Try and avoid doing that. This does try your patience a little. So carefully locate the pivot onto the trailing arm, and then click, and away it's home. And that is that part together. You can see we've got full articulation and we've got the swivel point moving. Now we need to get it glued together. So start from the furthest point away from anything that articulates. So we start from here, which is the indent below where the pivot point is. So you want to glue and hold. Now we could use Revell contactor on the jointing surface if we want, but actually Tamiya extra thin is strong enough for what we need to do. So again, run it down the seam. You can put a tiny bit in here and let it wick, but don't go too close to the pivot point. And then you just push it together. That's probably at this point, you know, obviously check you've got that articulation, and there's nothing. As soon as you put glue on an area where it's supposed to move, it'll stiffen up pretty much straight away, so you know you've got a problem. This here is a bump stop, and that goes in to the recess that we've glued. There's a keyway for the bump stop to get it in the right place, but you can actually use that to help you glue up that part, because you can get that in, push it down, and that will help bond it all up. Right, so what I did next is just got a peg, and I just pegged the part in place. Again, just checking that that still moves freely. I haven't glued it up. It moves, but I fear I might have glued it. Yeah, that has had a bit of glue. The capillary action has carried it around that. Happy days. So what we can do is we can just pop that apart just enough to figure out where it's being glued to break the bond. and there has just been, there we go, you can see there at the top. And that shows you how good Tamiya Extra Thin is. So that part, it's just wicked in glue and glued itself silly, which is a shame, because we do need that to move. So I was obviously a lot better in the first one than I was with the second. So just use the tweezers to kind of mold any melted plastic away. Now bearing in mind that the surfaces that were glued will still be tacky. So when we put it back together, then they will bond. We should have enough of the glued surface cleaned up that we'll be able to make it free again. So just place the part back in and then get it back together. We'll get a peg on. We'll just check that it's movable again. That's a bit ropey, but we'll keep it free. We need to put a tiny bit of glue in here on the front. We do need that to be glued together. There is a strengthening web right in here. Very difficult to see it. If you needed to, you could take the brush very carefully and just touch and flow on the plastic in the strengthening web just to help bond that part together. So that's that together. We've got this part here to put on, and this is a bracket that helps support the PE for the pipe clamps. And again, that will aid the strengthening of these joints. It's obviously going to brace itself across the joint, so that will make that construction an awful lot stronger, which is good. Right, so we've got articulation, but we've got a sticky pin, which that happens. So when you get a piece like this that has had a bit of Tamiya Extra Thin on it and is wanting to bind up, what you have to do is just keep it mobile, and it will eventually, as the glue cures and evaporates, then you'll break that glue bond and it will kind of just almost wear itself free. But it can be a little tricky and a little tiresome, and you just have to manipulate that part back and forth just to help degrade the glued surface. It does take a little while for that glue to cure properly and to go off, that you break the joint and it stays broken. So there we go. Just exactly what I said I didn't want to do, I ended up doing. That's just modeling for you. We'll just get a blade and slide it under there. Just try and cut it free. As I said before, if you know you're gonna build this in total subsections and you don't need it to move, then it doesn't matter so much if you've glued it, but I obviously want to be able to articulate it. What we can do is we can test it. Just pick a slot, fix it in. And I've also told you an absolute fib. That keyway on this doesn't need to be pointing to the rear, it needs to be pointing to the front. The joys are working upside down, so when that goes in the hole, then that has to articulate around. So So it's getting freer. Anyway, I'll leave that on there for now whilst it's doing its thing. I've got the brake chamber here. So that's the main construction pieces. We've got here the photo-etch parts and the pipe clamps. We don't need them at this moment, so we'll just ignore that. The next thing to do is to turn over, and you can see the piping that you need to do. So what you do need to do is work on one side and then go to the other, because they're all slightly different lengths. So this one here has got that drawing, and then this box here relates to, if you go from the front to the back, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first 4 wheel stations relate to this one, and the sizes of the lines on this drawing, and then the rear one relates to the size of the lines here. And we need to get them on. You do need to actually put the brake chamber in place, and it's very, very vague as to where and how it goes. The thing you've got to remember is when that axle compresses, the brake chamber needs to clear the top of the axle and not foul it. So don't put the brake chamber like so. It needs to hang out the back a little bit, kind of like, you know, something like that there. So what we can do is just get a little bit of super glue again, because it's not a very positive location, it's very woolly. So a little bit of super glue on there, and we can just glue that into the correct position we're happy with. And then what we can do is get a bit of extra thin, just wick that in there, and that will set up nicely. Right, now that we've had the wheel station in the chassis, it is freeing up slightly. The more we move it, the easier it gets. So we see the orientation of the keyway, it's pointing that way. So sort of to the rear of the trailing arm, rather as the sort of front face. So I'll stand corrected from what I said at the start of this part. Right, so now we've got lines to sort out. So lead lines, here we go. So you need 2 pieces per axle. And this stuff from ASK is really, really nice and shiny, very malleable. So just pull it through your fingers. Now the thing to remember, this is lead. So you can pull it through to your fingers to straighten it, it's very soft. However, lead is a toxin. It doesn't do your system any good. So in an ideal world, you should wear some nitrile gloves just to put a barrier between you and it. You must always, always, always wash your hands before you, well, when you finish working with it, wash your hands definitely before you consume anything or go for a smoke or anything like that, to minimize the absorption. That's the sort of health and safety bit out of the way. Yeah, lead poison is not very nice. Right, so rule, and then we need to pick a side, basically what we're going to start on first. Now you can see this drawing here, and it's like I said there, they're expecting you to feed these cables through underneath the strut bottom to the brake chamber. Absolute pain in the hoop. So what I did, or what I figured out to do, is first of all cut the line. So you've got dark grey and light grey. So dark grey, and this picture is the internal line to the brake chamber. So this is the pneumatic line, the pneumatic line, and then the light grey line is the hydraulic line to the strut. It's going to be riveting viewing for you guys, but I know there's been a few comments from channel viewers asking about how I was going to tackle these hydraulic lines, and this is exactly how I'm going to do it, and I think it's really the easiest way to do it. So the first one we need is 96mm. So we just go to 96mm. Being lead, it's nice and soft, cuts beautifully. And then the second line we need is 92mm. So I'll go at the end of the rule. .92mm. Now don't worry if you think there's going to be not enough, because there's plenty of slack to do what you need to do on these parts. Always after I've cut the parts, I just put the offcuts straight in the packet, because they will come in handy for another build at some point. We'll look to these second ones as well. I may as well cut it all at the same time and then it's done. So the next line we need for the brake chamber is 99mm. So you can see how they needed nearly 5 meters of line to do this. .99mm. Let's face it, if you took 100mm, it's not going to be the end of the world. So we'll leave that there because we know that's for the brake chamber. And then for the last piece for this axle, it is 92.5. Well, there's a precise measurement. I would say 93 is not going to be far off, neither is 92, but 92.5. So 92.5. There we go. That is our lines cut. Now, the next thing to think of is, right, we've got to get that line underneath the axle. Well, actually you don't. What you need to do is figure out how much line you need to get from the brake chamber to underneath the axle. Now, I should have done this on the last one. I figured out how much I needed, but I didn't. So it is just a shallow curve, and this is the beauty of lead line. It's so easy and moldable. So just get to the point where you're happy, you're confident, you know how much line you need, and then just snip it. Alright, there we go. So we know how much we need, and we now need to straighten that piece of line out. The easiest way to do that is actually get your rule, set it on top, and then just drag it back and forth, and you'll end up with perfectly straight line. The only reason we need a straight line, if I zoom out a bit, you'll be seeing what I'm doing with the cutting. No, that's in, out. Oh, there we go, far too far. See how messy my desk is. So we just need to measure how much we use to get that nice curve from the bottom of the strut to the brake chamber itself. So just line it up to the end of the rule. And that is 28.5mm. So 28mm for 29mm, it's up to you. 28.5, I've measured it, so we'll use that. So next thing to do is the other height, the other line is do exactly the same. We know we need 28.5, so we'll just go along 28.5. Right, now we've absolutely made an ass of that, haven't I? Yep. just to prove I'm only human. We'll measure that again. It's actually 18.5. Oh dear, must be getting late in the evening. Excuse me whilst I cut a new piece of line. 99mm. It's there. Right. And then 18.5mm. Is there. Right. So that's our 99mm line. With a cut down. So we've now got two pieces. Should be the same size, which they are, that we can use to create the loop of line from that comes underneath the strut bottom and goes to the brake chamber. So grab your tweezers and then put that little bit of curve in that line. Do a bit of test fitting. So that goes down into there, and then it'll glue on to the piece that we cut those two joint-in nipples off. So that just fits nicely. So bit of glue, super glue. First one goes in. Second one. And they won't have a similar shape, because normally they would. And don't worry about what paint color you need to paint these things in, because when these things were over painted with desert sand, everything got a coat of desert sand. So these lines will have been whatever color they were painted by the guys painting the vehicles up wherever they were going to be deployed. So just checking, the second one's just about where we want it. So again, glue. Now you can just glue the bottom end that goes into the strut or the trailing arm, and leave the top end unglued just until you get to the point where you're happy with it. And then when you're happy, we'll get a touch of glue in there to glue them in. So that's the first two lines in, and that'll also help firm up the brake chamber support just whilst you're waiting for the glue to set up. And if we want to just give it a bit of kicker, Jesus, on a mission tonight. Again, I just use Mitre Fast. I do have Vital Bond. I tend to save that if I'm using it for painted parts, because it doesn't fog. This stuff can fog a little bit. Right, so there's the first part in. Now, what we need to do is take our parts that we've cut down, and we need to think about how we're going to thread them in and where they're going to go. But to do that properly, actually we need to get the photo etch parts done. because we need that to capture the line as it comes out from the joint in the axle. The other thing to do is to make sure that when you see that there, when the axle's fully depressed, those lines aren't being caught underneath the bump stop, which they're not, so we're happy with that. And there's another thing, now that this thing's had a chance to sort of glue, and the glue's had a chance to cure a little bit. Oh, I need to get decent tweezers that grip. There, if we grip that part, the swivel point, it's swiveling nice and free now. There, right. Anyway, so Photo-etch. You need the Photo-etch fret SC. I'm going to zoom in a bit so you can see what we're doing. So Photo-etch SC, and we need parts 11 and 3. Now, I like using a rounded blade. This is just a number 23 blade on a number 4 handle, because you can just nearly rock the blade over the connecting point. You might want to use a pair of over glasses just to magnify what you're doing. Very, very small parts, and what we need is just a little 90-degree kick up on the end. There is a very fine bending line there, and you can actually do it just with tweezers. You don't need anything special. And I should imagine your other half's eyebrow plucking tweezers would be perfect, especially if they've got a straight edge on them. So that's the first part you need. We need to get a little bit of glue on this part here that we put on. So just with our applicator, you just want to run a line of glue towards the rear of that. And this part then just sits on there, like so. Make sure it's equal, it's not poking out more to one side than the other, and that it's in a good position. The next part to get off are parts 3, and this is the bit where you need, well, it would be handy to have some sort of a round nose bending pliers. And they don't have to be all singing, all dancing ones, just the fact that they're round nose bending pliers. Jeweler's pliers basically. So we're looking at something like this. What we need to do is get that part. You will see that part does have a bolt head on one side, or one end should I say, of the rounded end. And what we need to do is, with the bolt head facing up the way, we just need to grip that part in the point of the pliers and then roll it around like so. And you can go a fair piece around. You don't need to close it up, but you can go enough that that part then, when you lay the lead wire through, it will catch it and hold it. That's so small and it's so hard to show you. What I will do is I'll glue it in place, and then we'll try and get the camera to zoom in on the part so you can see what we're talking about. But anyway, once you form that circle or half circle in that hose clamp, you want to get the axle with the first piece of Photo-etch you've glued on, and then you just dip that part you've just formed into the glue on your glue stand, and then just glue it to the first part you put on. is really tricky. It will test your patience. There's no doubt about that. I certainly don't want to leave you under any illusion how easy this part of the build is, because it's not. But then you don't buy a kit like this to have an easy build. And this is where your enjoyment factor comes in, because you're now building something that, you know, a lot of modelers wouldn't tackle, because it is a complicated build and it does take time. But the reward is in the completed model, and that it's going to be an absolute showstopper hopefully when it's done. So same again, just roll it around, and this is where your fingers are a great tool, because your skin is soft and squidgy. It helps to bend and manipulate the part into the shape you want, but the end of those tweezers is just about the right circumference to mold that hose clamp. Again, dip it in the glue and glue it to the clamp we put on first. Right, so hopefully you can see that now. That's the 3 pieces of Photo-etch that go together to form the hose clamps. And you can see how I've left them open. It doesn't matter that they're not exactly precise the same. All it needs to do is capture the wire, and then we're going to roll it around and close it up. And realistically, you can see it on the camera, but in the real life it's tiny. But you can also see where those lines are going in to the brake chamber and then dipping underneath the axle. Then you can see how that's still all movable, which is brilliant. So we're in a good place. Right, next, what we need, I need to clean off my applicator. It's got some dry glue on it. Right, next we need is the lines that we cut the ends off to form the first part. And one slightly longer as the other. I might figure out which one was the longest line. I'll just move that Photo-etch out of the way. And this is where another thing you need is a lot of space to work on this kit, because I've got a reasonable sized bench and it's fairly well filled with parts of it. Right, so which had the longer of the 2 lines? That had 96 and that one was 99, so the longer side needs to go on this side first. So what we need to do is this line's got to go in at the pivot point, and then it's supposed to dip underneath the articulated axle. So what we need to do is just put a little bend in like that, and then that line's got to go down through the articulation point and then locate underneath there. So we'll just do the same. We'll plenty of glue. You're never going to see this in a month of Sundays, so it doesn't matter if you've got lots of glue, but you do need to get that right into the bottom of the arm underneath the hydraulic strut, and then just make sure that there's enough space. Just move it over so you've got enough space to get the second line in. Second line, little bend, plenty of glue, in through and down. There we go. Of course it will fall out. Why would anything be easy? Try again, second time round. Refresh the glue in through the pivot and then down into the bottom of the trailing arm. And that's it. Now, to all intents and purposes, you would not know that we've cut that cable in half, or that tubing in half, to get it to look exactly how it would needs to look. So now that we've got that there, then we obviously have to think about positioning in regards to the second lot of lines. And the way they've got it here is that these lines, which are the pneumatic lines, the hydraulic lines, go in after the pneumatic lines, who then they go in first, then these lines go on top, and then you close the clamp. And the pneumatic lines go either side of the hydraulic lines. It's an absolute it's a mare's nest, bird's nest of stuff in there. It really did take the time to figure out what's what. So if we do in this side first, then that first hydraulic line is the 92.5, so we'll just see if we can pick the right arm, because the second one is 92, well, the 6 and 2 3s, aren't they? 0.5 of a mil, I don't think it's going to break the bank, but we'll do it by the instructions. That is 92, so this one should be 92.5. 0.5 mil. Yep, that's it. So this one first. Now again, it's good to preform the end. You need to put pretty much a 90-degree kick up, because that's got to go up and in and locate on the unions that we cleaned off in the first place. I really don't know if you're going to see this on the film, but with that bend we put in the line, it's absolutely perfect for going in and marrying up with the locating point. So again, we'll come in with some glue. We'll try and pre-glue the ends because we want to make this as painless as possible. Feed it through, get it in its location, and then just hold it in place whilst the super glue goes off. And hope the glue goes off reasonably quickly, which it probably won't, because my glue is getting old and it's taking a moment to go off. And what we can do is we could pre-spray these parts with activator, so when you do touch it with the part and glued part, it will go off reasonably quickly. So I think we're going to do that, because that's just not working and I haven't got time for this. So a little bit of activator in there, and come back in. We'll just reapply the glue to the end of this. This must be riveting viewing for you guys. So get that in, get it in location, glue and hold. This time it's gone off reasonably quickly. Now one of the problems we use in lead wire is it's lead. So it is a little bit weighty and it will want to pull itself away from whatever you're trying to glue. So that's why it's struggling to maintain the bond whilst we get it located. So second one. Plenty of glue. Now feed it in the other side of the bundle. Up and in. Turn it around so you can see where you want to glue it to. Get it on that glue point. And there we go. Right. And now we've got it glued. What we can do is we can just hold that with our finger. Been a bit too quick, it's popped off. Again, in all realism, you're never actually going to see half of this tubing, but you will see the tubing when it basically goes from the wheel station to the jointing on the lower side of the trailer, and you'll see all the cables hanging. I've looked at a few reference photographs and they are a very prominent feature of this trailer system. This is pain in the arse glue time because it's so not wanting to glue. I just haven't had a chance to go and get some fresh super glue. So there's another tip: when you're doing a job like this, make sure you've got a brand new tube of super glue so it goes off nice and quick. Right, that's it. So now that we've glued all these lines in place, and this is the beauty of lead, we need to manipulate them into where they're supposed to go. So we can gently bring that line up, and we need to be gentle. And the other thing to remember when you're using lead wire is don't grip it too hard. If you grip it with tweezers too hard, you'll flatten it out and you'll end up with flat wire rather than round wire. So what we need to do is actually, here, look here at the drawing, and it shows you a rough orientation of how the lines go. We can check on this side here. So basically the line comes up, gets captured by the hose clamp. It's reasonably flush to the back of the trailing the wheel station, so we can hold it in place with our finger and then put it in line with the wheel station and then turn it. And that gets us our position. Then we need to get the second line. So this is our pneumatic line, and that comes in, gets captured by the hose clamp. Now it's at this point, if you remember, we didn't close the clamp up, we left it open. It's at this point we need to just be very, very careful with our tweezers and then just gently push that Photo-etch up and in so it captures the lines. It won't close all the way, it can't, but it's not far off. All it needs to do is capture those lines. And we can put a drop of super glue on to secure it. Once we're happy we're in place. Gently put your thumb or finger over it just to hold them in place, and then you want to just get those lines going down the side of the wheel station. Like so. So that's roughly how you want to have those lines. Now the next thing to do is to get part P11. There's P11 and P12. They are obviously sided. So P11. Now if you've got good side cutters, you won't need to clean these parts up. They'll be pretty clean. I've lost the line. I'll have to glue that on after. By the time you put this bracket on, it will actually firm up all these lines and you shouldn't lose them. Again, what I'm going to do is put a little drop of super glue on the locating tab of P11 just so we get a quicker bond, nothing other than that. So that goes in place and then it locks down over the lines. And we've got to get it in place because it prevents the lines from going above this rotating surface of the wheel station, and it will save it fouling. But it's got to be in the right position. So once that's in place and it nicely grips the lines, come in with some extra thin just to give the rest of the plastic a chance to bond to itself. And that's one side done. So let's get this. I need some more glue because I've lost all the glue on my holder. So you can see this is not a quick job at all. It's going to take your time and it's going to test your patience. However, if you just do a couple a night, then 4 or 5 nights you're going to have the whole lot done. So we re-glued this, get it back in place. Come in with the tweezers, we want to just hold it in place, which it is. Good enough. Still locate and movable. So hydraulic first, so just hold it so it doesn't move, and then gently pull it down so it comes into the hose clamp. And then, as I said, the beauty of lead line is it's very, very easy to manipulate. Once it's in the hose clamp, we want to then roughly hold it in place so we can orientate it to the back of the wheel station up to the top there, and then turn the corner. Second line comes out, follows over the top, and then we move that piece of Photo-etch if it focuses, hopefully. Move that Photo-etch, just roll it around. So just roll it over so it grips those lines. Like so. And then we can hold and fold to match the first ones. Get it in place, and we'll get P12. A little bit of super glue on the locating pin of P12 and locate that in place. Clip the wire into it and hold it so it goes off. Make sure we are not fouling that rotating surface, and what we can do is just run a file over it just to make sure that there is no projections above the top of that. Come in with some extra thin just to cure up the joints of the rest of this. And once you get P11 and P12 in and you've done all this manipulation, this lead wire is going absolutely nowhere. It's absolutely fast and secure. And then just to make sure, belt and braces. I'm a Yorkshireman and we believe in belt and braces, or galluses as we call them where I come from. What we can do is just put a little drop of super glue just in about where the pipes go through the hose clamps, just to support that construction. And that is there we go, that is the wheel station, complete with all the necessary hydraulic and pneumatic lines on it. And it actually looks fantastic. I am really happy how they go together. What we need to do next is we actually need to go and look at the braking system. So that's over the page, because they would have you put it on before you do that, which you mustn't do. You must build these arms up as far as you possibly can before you attach them to the chassis. So give me a moment, I'll clean all these parts up, and then we can come back and look at the assembly. Right, we're back and we've got all these parts cleaned up, bar one bit which I thought I'd show you. So these are the brake back plates, and you can see here on the back then there's a bit of rim of flash there. Very easy to clean up with a scalpel, but you must clean it up, otherwise you'll not get a very good fit at all. So it just scrapes away, and that's it. The rest of the mouldings are pretty good. So comes in two halves. You've got P37, P38, but the rest of the parts are identical. So you've got the brake drum, and then inside the brake drum goes P20. There's a little bit of flash inside some of these parts. Again, just clear it away with a scalpel, just to make sure that there's no impingement to them going together. Right, so you've got here part P20. P20 sits in the center, like so, and then you've got part P21 that just goes on there, and that's obviously designed to be the hub. All you need to do, these are designed to be rotational. Doesn't matter on monkeys whether they can rotate or not, unless you want to run it on the ground. But put your glue inside that part and then just slide that onto the pin in P20, and then the whole lot gets glued together with the back plate. Again, just put that on. It's a very good fit. Don't push it all the way in, leave a little gap. That will help the capillary action to draw the glue all the way around, and then push it home. That's one side done. So same on the other side. Again, just check for flash. There is a little bit of flash in there. Clean it away. So that part in first, P20, bit of glue in the back of P21, P21 in place, back plate in place, drop of glue. Very simple construction. And after the fun we've had with the the wheel station itself, it's nice to have a bit that's got a bit of simple construction. Right, you also need part P18, which is the brake actuator arm, to join this together. So orientate the wheel station as in the picture, and then you'll notice the hole for P18, so that goes to that side. We then need to get P18 and pop him in place. There are a couple of bolt details on P18. They go to the top basically, so if you can see the bolt details there, they go pointing up towards the brake chamber rather as down. So locate it in the brake back plate, and then there's a recess in the middle that should locate into the actuating arm that we fixed into the brake chamber earlier on. And that just locates perfectly. Then come in with the other side and marry it up. And then what we want to do is just rotate the hubs so that everything is square. Like so. That's that part. And then the next thing to do, once we're happy with everything, is get the glue out, get it glued together. So it's just touch and float. So back of the hubs to the main axle shafts. Make sure we're gluing in the actuation rod, and then once we've got the glue in, we just want to make sure everything lines up square. Again, we haven't moved anything. Everything looks just as it should. The old Mark 1 eyeball rarely lies. So we can just touch and hold for a pretty moment, just to give the glue a chance to do its thing, for the plastic to bond up. And there we go. We have now a completed wheel station that is at the point that we can affix it to the trailer bottom. So again, just to make sure that this pivot is free. Alright, it's free enough. So Now we need to think about getting it on here, and how we're going to do that, I hear you say. Well, carefully, because we've already, obviously, we can actually just turn these off to one side as well, and kick them up slightly so they clear the center thing. Because I've already glued this up once, we want to be very, very careful with the glue. So what we need to do is just, with the extra thin, just paint the inside of the rim with a bit of glue. You don't need much, but enough just to then come in with the part, help the tweezers, just get it located, and when it's fitted properly and that keyway is engaged, then it is fairly flat to the trailer bottom. There's really no distance between the two parts. Just hold it and let it give it a moment to grip. And then we can try it. It's a little loose, but it's moving. So I might need a touch more glue. What we could do is actually come in with a drop of super glue, just to help the situation. I don't know what I've done with my applicator. I'll use a different one. A couple of drops of super glue just in the rim where it's going to go in, come back in, push down and hold. Right, now I'm not going to move this just while the glue cures up, but what we can do now, if I just elevate this up, we actually need to go back a page. This is the pain in the rear for these instructions. There's a lot of to-ing and fro-ing. So we're now okay, there isn't much, this is the, there isn't much guide as to what goes where. But what I can see is the I think the hydraulic circuit for the steering is on the chassis. So difficult. Right, so if I remember right, the top lines are the hydraulic lines, and they're the shorter ones. So the longer lines have to go to the fixings that are here on the central chassis spine of the trailer. So we can move them out of the way. And then the shorter lines have to go here to those fixings there. So just hold the wheel station with your thumb or whatever you want to clamp, and then you just want to manipulate those lines to a rough position. So there's the two shorter lines. So they go there. And then the two longer lines will come in here over the top like so. So we'll keep them out of the way for now that we've got their rough position. And we'll focus about getting these lines into place. As before, we need to come in with a scalpel and just remove very carefully the jointing nipples on these parts. And the 26 scalpel blade is really good because it's quite a long, thin pointed blade. So it's easy to get into there. These parts are a bit flimsy and we don't want to break them off. And once they're removed, it's just a case of gluing up the lines and putting them in. So I will get my applicator because I must have dropped it, can't find it. Oh, it's just here. I'll get my applicator cleaned and we'll come in and we'll glue these lines in. So just give me a moment. Right, so glue is on the unions now. So we just need to come in, and this is a bit tricky because we've also got the fixing point in the place, in the way, sorry. So I just need to manipulate the lead wire and get it in to a rough location. Bend the wire just however you need it to be to get into a good orientation to fix onto the unions. And it might take a few tries, especially with my old glue. It won't be easy because it wants to go. It doesn't want to grip. Nearly there. A bit more glue just to fasten this all in. So push and hold, and we'll get that gripped. As always, we can come in with a bit of kicker, help cure up the glue, just blow off the excess, and that'll give us a more instantaneous bond on these parts. Right, that's the first lot of lines in, so I'm going to leave that just a minute or so to dry off completely, and then we'll come and get the next lot in, so back in a moment. Right, now that's had a moment to dry, what we can do is we can just gently manipulate the lead lines into place. And just lay them flat against the chassis. Right, last but not least, we need to deal with the second set of lines. So same again, just come in and cut away the joint and nipple. And if I was wise, I would have done this before we put the wheel station in place, but then whoever said I was a wise man. Right. This should be a little bit easier, hopefully, he says, optimistically. So, one at a time. So, lower one first. Just manipulate it so you're happy with how it's going to sit. And I know it looks like there's a lot of excess line here, but if you look at reference photographs, there is actually a lot of line underneath these things to allow them to turn and pivot and articulate. So it's reasonably realistic. So just hold that in place until it goes off, which of course it's not one to do. Why would it do anything that actually you want it to do? So you can see why I said just do a couple of these a night, because by the time you've done all this you're going to be absolutely brain fried. So I'll get that in there and hopefully that'll grip this time. Really doesn't want to grip. There we go, that's that one in. Just a little extra drop of glue there, just to belt and braces. Oh, you pain in the ass. And this is another reason why, to my mind, you need to do all this work before you paint this. Because you imagine if you've painted this and you start coming in and having to put lines in and super glue and all this lot, you're going to make an absolute hash of your paint job. So you may as well just persevere, get this together now, and then come in and paint it after. This one is really testing my patience tonight. Does not want to stay where I want it to stay. Get in there. Right, let's get the activator on it before we do anything else. Right, last but not least, let's clean off our applicator. Right, so last bit of line, just bring it down into position. You'd think lead line wouldn't be so springy, but it seems to be. Right, so just hook it under the union, glue on the end. And hopefully we can get it before it cures up completely to catch. There we go. Oh, excuse me. There we go. Right. A little bit extra glue just to hold it all in place, and we are at the point where we can breathe a sigh of relief, I think. So a little extra glue on that joint. And a little extra glue on the bottom joint. Touch a kicker. And that is the bulk of the work done. Now what we can do is we can come in and we can just manipulate these lines. And what I'm probably thinking to do is I might actually have check and see. It might be worth putting a little clamp over here just to hold it in place. I don't know. I don't know what's on the real vehicle, but we could do a bit of research and see. But the beauty of lead lining is it does kind of just stay where you want it to stay. So that's that. If I just zoom out a little bit, we'll get a little wider field of vision. It's difficult trying to show you what I'm doing, but also get it all in focus, in frame even. Come on, zoom. There we go. Oh, far too far. There. So there we go. That is the second wheel station in place. It is still movable, which is good. It's in line with the first one, which is good. And hopefully you can see that the hydraulic lines and the pneumatic lines we've put in look absolutely spot on. I actually think the second one is better than the first one with the positioning of the lines on the wheel station. So I'm very happy with that. Now I've just got to do it another 8 times. So Yeah, glutton for punishment. If you're going to build this kit, you really are a glutton for punishment. But in all honesty, using vinyl tubing to do what we've just done is an absolute nonsense. I really do think the only way to do it is to do it with lead lining, just purely for the ease of manipulation and adherence, and just the general ease of it all. To do that with vinyl tube would have been an absolute nightmare, and you probably would have put this kit straight back in the box and never looked at it again. As a few people have messaged me saying that they have done in the past for this very problem. It's the hydraulic and pneumatic lines that we've been doing now that have caused all these issues for people's builds to stall. So I can see exactly why that's happened. But that really does look the business, and once we get it all painted and weathered up, it's going to look even better. So there we go. Any comments or questions, as always, feel free to pop them down below. I appreciate anyone takes the time to ask a question, and I will endeavour to get you answered in a reasonably quick fashion. If you like what you see and you want to support the channel, please consider liking the videos and subscribing. It costs you nothing to subscribe, but it does help the channel. And as always, if you subscribe, make sure you knock the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future content. So till next time, guys, stay safe and happy modeling.